Sindhu Thomas George, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on because this is something that's extremely important. And over the last 3 weeks, you and I talked quite a bit about everything that's going on since George Floyd murder. And I want you to be able to talk about how professionally in the workplace, how people can deal with it, because there is no standard operating procedures on how to deal with something like this in the middle of a pandemic, right? So the one question that I have for you is, how can we stand in solidarity with Black Americans during all this? Mm-hmm. And how can we engage in cross-racial allyship?
Yeah. So I just want to acknowledge, first of all, that 3 weeks ago, it was literally taboo and frowned upon to talk about racism and all of these topics in the workplace, which is unfortunate. And this conversation is long overdue in the workplace. And second, there's no way I can talk about all of that in 5 minutes, but I am going to focus the conversation on what we can do to uplift and show up for our Black employees and our Black colleagues. And I do have a resource guide that you can link in a 10-minute video that talks about 10 ways you can help fight anti-Blackness. But I want to start with, in the workplace, I think it's really important to check in with your Black employees, right? They have to hold the pain and trauma of the system of anti-Black racism that manifests itself in many different ways, including in the workplace. And the system of anti-Blackness has been alive in this country for 400 years. And the uprising that's happening right now is really personal for them. And so it's hard on everybody, but it's the hardest on Black Americans. And not thinking or talking about racism is a privilege that Black and brown employees don't have. So just because you don't personally experience it or deal with it doesn't mean it's not important to address in your workplace. So, check in with your Black employees and address racism because it happens, and even in your workplaces it happens. Also, don't expect that your Black employees are going to lead discussions about anti-Black racism or lead the inclusion initiatives or lead discussions about what's happening in our society right now, unless they want to do it. Because I work in this space, I've heard so many times, clients say, oh, well, we have this awesome Black person, a Black employee, and she was willing to discuss this, or we asked her to discuss things. And I just cringe because I'm like, I hope that that person wanted to, right? Because that can also create further harm and further trauma that already exists. And, diversity and inclusion and developing anti-racism should really be the responsibility across the organization, not just on your employees of color. So it's really important to remember. And another thing is that if you care about Black lives and you're sincere in your commitment as an organization to join the fight against anti-Black racism, then communicate it and communicate it publicly. So many people have reached out to me recently saying, should I put a statement out? I'm only a 6-person company, or we're only 10 people, and I don't want to seem like I'm just riding on the bandwagon. But it's really important that if you're not doing it to ride the wave or self-promotional reasons, but you really do truly care about dismantling racism, by all means, put out a statement and make sure that you walk your talk, right? So if you're putting out a statement, say that what you care and what you're going to do about this problem, and then do it, right? Don't just put out a statement and not follow up with it. And I think it's so important to use your platform and to use your voice to publicly condemn anti-Black racism. So as Desmond Tutu famously said, if you're neutral or silent in times of injustice, then you have chosen the side of the oppressor. And I really, truly believe that. It's so important to voice your support for Black lives if you believe that Black lives matter. And then examine your own anti-Black biases and work on developing your own anti-racism as an organization, right? This has to be a collective effort, and bring in an expert who has experience talking about race privilege, and the system of racism. And unlearning our racial biases and prejudices is really challenging and uncomfortable work, but it's so necessary to create an inclusive workplace for our Black, Indigenous, and employees of color. And, if you're going to be doing anti-racism work, please don't expect that you're going to get that service for free. You need to pay for anti-racism training, just like you would pay for public speaking training or leadership training. And it's really disrespectful and degrading to ask for anti-racism training without having a budget or saying you don't have the budget. Because if it's an organizational priority, then you have to put your money where your mouth is and find a budget. And I'm extra passionate about that point because, I have been in communication with a lot of other diversity and inclusion practitioners of color that have been approached to do this work for free, including myself. And it's just, if you would pay a, leadership development trainer to do the work, you should also pay an anti-racist trainer, because it's years of competence, experience, and knowledge that they have gained in order to do this work and do it effectively. Couple more things is commit to amplifying the voices of Black employees and advancing them. So invest in your Black employees, mentoring, sponsorship, professional development, create ERGs so that they can move up in the organization and sit at the decision-making tables and hold the positions of power. And that's something that can help advance the Black community as well, and create inclusion within your own environments for Black and brown employees. And then get involved with or donate to organizations that are committed to changing the anti-Black policies and laws that exist, because the whole point of activism is policy change, right? And so protesting and, rioting and all of these things are important to change the system, but nothing changes it more than policies. And so, donate, sponsor, volunteer for organizations, and a few of them I have on my resource guide, but Color of Change is one, Black Futures Lab is another one just off the top of my head. You can also make an impact locally. Partner with your local YWCA or Big Brothers Big Sisters or other organizations that are working to advance the opportunity of Black youth in your communities. So those are all some things that organizations can do. And I think, I want to end by saying that we all have a voice. We all have a platform, and we all have the ability to work to disrupt anti-Black racism. And if we care about diversity and inclusion, then we have to work towards racial equalities, not only in our families or in the larger society, but also in our workplaces, because that's where we spend so much of our time. And so those are some of the things that I would suggest that businesses could consider to stand in solidarity with Black Americans and engage in cross-racial allyship as it relates to the workplace.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I 100% agree with you on that. It's just like, I think right now, at least people that I've been talking to, they just don't know exactly what to do. So those things that you just mentioned are really good key points. And then obviously I'll tag you in on the LinkedIn video. So people have other questions are more than welcome to reach out, connect, message, whatever. And I know you've been doing a lot of things lately, obviously, but so I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Yeah. No problem. I think it's an important topic, and as somebody who's been in the space for a long time, I think it's more important. We have an opportunity right now to really help, disrupt anti-Blackness. And I don't have time to talk about how anti-Blackness works, but it shows up in the workplace, right? It affects our morale. It affects people. And if we're talking specifically about Black people, you want to create an inclusive environment where Black people can thrive, and it's all of our responsibility to do that. And because we're on this national conversation of disrupting anti-Blackness, it's an important conversation to have. How can you disrupt it in your workplace? And I've been working with a lot of organizations that are wanting to have this conversation, and I think it's great. And we need to keep having it. And one thing I want to say is we can't stop caring about this when the news cycle changes, right? Because life is going to go on. Black people have been murdered at the hands of police officers for centuries. This isn't new, and it's going to continue to go on. And we have to really collectively stay engaged, right? This isn't something that's trendy. This is something that matters. And so especially if your company is all about inclusion and equity, then I think it's really important to walk the talk and commit to racial equality in your workplace. So,
absolutely, very well said. Thank you again for your time. And then, if anybody has questions, reach out to Sindhu directly. But there will be more things that I'm doing regarding this topic and what people can do in order to create improvements within their organization. So, thank you, Sindhu.
Thanks for having me. Take care.